Hi everyone, the Beatles 150 series, and today we are doing number 50. The title is Nowhere Man. Well, I'm going to read about it in just a moment, but for those of you watching on YouTube, we're very sorry. We wanted to have this entire series completely uncut and available to everyone on YouTube. Unfortunately, YouTube has restricted us. We cannot do that. So we can only offer excerpts here. We're doing our best to give you as much as we can without crossing the line. If you wish to see the complete thing, you can always check out my Patreon page and find everything there. So, Nowhere Man, the 50th in the 150 series. The genre is folk rock and psychedelic rock. Let's see what I have to read about this one. Nowhere Man is among the very first Beatles songs to be entirely unrelated to romance or love, and marks a notable instance of Lennon's philosophically oriented songwriting. Well, how appropriate for this to be number 50, right? 50 just feels like we're crossing a big landmark, and, well, it seems like this piece is a bit of a landmark too. While most of the songs they wrote and recorded in 1966 avoided the love subject entirely, John's 1965 masterpiece, Nowhere Man, was the first to break the mold. It reached number 1 in Australia and Canada and number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. Nowhere Man was one of John's, coming from a big night the night before and getting to bed about 5 in the morning, with dawn coming up, explained Paul. John himself gave a few recollections of writing the song on different occasions, the first in 1967, in which he struggled to remember it clearly. I was just sitting, trying to think, and I thought of myself sitting there, doing nothing and going nowhere. Actually, once I'd thought of that, it was easy. It all came out. No, I remember now. I had actually stopped trying to think of something. Nothing would come. I was cheesed off and went for a lie down, having given up. Then I thought of myself as Nowhere Man, sitting in this nowhere land. In Paul's 2021 Hulu documentary series McCartney 321, he detailed their attitude regarding experimentation in general, Nowhere Man being an early example. For us, said Paul, the worst thing was to be bored. We're young 20-year-olds, and we've already got some success, so we've got the excitement of youth and the sort of speed of youth, and a lot of the engineers have come up with us, so they know how stupid we were and how cheeky we were and how ambitious we are, and it rubbed off. You know, saying to them, come on, get more of this, more of this, more of this. And they kind of get a little look on their face like we're all naughty boys in the studio. We're going to actually break a few rules here. And if it worked, we'd go, yes! We started to have a bit more freedom and allow ourselves more freedom. And George Martin allowed us more freedom. So we could then push the envelope a bit. That's the feeling I get when I listen to their music, especially as I'm going through sequentially. I feel like they're always looking for some new bit of excitement, or how can they bend the rules, or how can they take everything, whatever they've got, and apply it a bit differently than before. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me. While the lyrics to Nowhere Man may not have been as well thought out as we would like to think they were, Lennon's mid-career, mid-marriage, mid-suburbia malaise, as author Chris Ingham describes the song in The Rough Guide to the Beatles, resulted in a groundbreaking song that appears ever more lyrically deep and all-encompassing in retrospect. John Lennon was undoubtedly a thinking person, the Beatle who spearheaded the trend of pouring out his thoughts, reflections, and emotions in his compositions. Paul, who described himself as a big Lennon fan during the height of the Beatles' fame, began to follow suit to great effect, but it was John who was eager to get past the formula pop song, and once he had, he never looked back. Yeah, this really does sound like it's going to be a significant marker along the Beatle road. So let's see how it sounds. He's a real nowhere man. That's certainly something a bit different. Not just the lyrics, but the music itself. I wouldn't say it's a brand new sound, but it's a bit different than the greater percentage of what we've been hearing. There were some things that stood out to me as, well, this la 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 la, it was just the last one I listened to, was ooh la la la, something like that. I wonder if maybe he got a little bit inspired to use that from how well it worked in that song. Some interesting little ends to musical phrases where, and this is a good example of really great melodic writing where the melody just feels like it flows and it goes and it's perfectly natural going where it goes. You kind of begin to predict where it's going to go because it feels like it's going to arrive somewhere, but then just a little tweak so that you don't feel like it's a formula. A couple little moments like that caught my ears along the way. So let's go back through and start pulling it apart piece by piece and see what else we discover.
He's a real nowhere man.
I love this a cappella opening, and it's not just because it's a cappella, but it's the way they're treating the music and the way they're handling their voices. Well, it's three-part, of course, but more than that, how would I describe it? It has this sort of strident quality, kind of like, and yet at the same time, it's sliding around. They're smoothly gliding from one note to the next. And how would I describe it? I guess it's a bit like when you take a rubber band and you stretch it tight and you feel the gliding of the tension, but there's a tautness to it all. And that's how this sounds to me at the beginning. This tautness and this very present edge to their harmony and their voices.
He's a real nowhere man.
And I almost feel like when the instruments come in, they come in a little bit too aggressively for my taste. At least the first listening, it was a bit of a jolt when they came in. I was falling into this wonderful, slippy, slidey, sweeping, swirling, downward spiral of the melody. And speaking of melody, I want to talk about that a little bit in a moment. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, the instruments just come barging in and make their presence known. However, once they enter, they kind of don't really interfere with the voices, mostly because the voices are so riveting. They have this real catch you and grab you quality. And so even though there's quite a bit of instrumental activity happening in the background throughout the piece, it was a struggle for me to give attention to the instruments. There were a few moments in my first listen where I thought, wait a minute, I'm not even processing what's going on with the instruments because I'm so wrapped up in the vocal part of this piece. And the bass actually has some really lively walking around stuff going on, but it didn't pull me that direction. It was more once they jolted me when they first entered, then the voices had a way of still managing to hold my attention throughout. Okay, the melody. Maybe this is as good a time as any to talk about it because we dive right in with melody, don't we? Melody without even instruments. I like this melody. It has a real kind of downward spiral quality, and it takes us from, let's see, what is it? Basically it travels an octave. Wasn't there another song recently that had a rather octave descent? I guess that was Norwegian Wood. But that was a different sound. This one is smoother, and another thing that I notice about this song, in spite of it being Lennon's work, it doesn't have any of the classic triplets or other melisma type John Lennon Beatle-y fingerprints. So it really feels like he's trying something a bit different here. All right, this melody, how does it work? Why does it carry us and carry us and carry us? I mean, it's a pretty simple tune. Walking down, and then a little ending, right? But that is the key to its success. We start on the 5, and it launches us up to 1. We're in the key of E. So we immediately pick ourselves up. And we walk back down to the 5. And because we're descending, it's easy to descend one more. And then, because we've kind of set ourselves up this way, in the first, it's now not hard to take this one and just move up again and walk down again. And step down. Now here is the question of what to do at the end. Because if we don't do something, we're going to keep going. Something like that. We could keep going on and on and on. If this you hear how it could work, right? And it could turn into this really fabulous sort of improvisatory, virtuosic, tumbling down. But instead, we have to find some way to bring it to an end at the end of the phrase. And what did they do? Or he, John? Simple. I was expecting something else. Here's what I expected. Doesn't that sound like it could be something the Beatles would throw out? And so I was a bit surprised when it went. But actually, it makes a bit of sense. And it kind of, it gives it more of this, well, if we went like this, it would be a little more cheery and chipper, perky. It would bring a little spark to the end. But lyrically, we don't have much spark in here, do we? He's a real nowhere man sitting in his nowhere land. It needs to feel a bit lost and nowhere. Ironic that such a nowhere piece of music is so anchored in the tonic. When we end up at the end there, we are on the tonic. We go from the tonic. We're just walking around the scale. Nowhere in the key of E. Clearly, solidly established somewhere. Funny. But as far as descriptive, melodically descriptive, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Not to have a quick little lift that brightens it at the end, but more for nobody. Just a little bit of an appoggiatura. Here's the... And it leaves it a little bit more subdued and mellow and less driven to have that than da-da-dum. Let's listen to this again. I so enjoy this opening.
He's a real nowhere man.
And for nobody, the way they slide through these, of course, they can't slide on the harp or the piano like they slide with their voices, but They slide so easily, as if there's no resistance in this nowhere land. And that is one reason that the staying in the tonic key and just working within the tonic scale is so effective, because you don't have the drive of transposing, of traveling somewhere, of being on a mission and going to arrive in a different key or achieve something. It's more just gliding through this space that he's in, wherever he is, which happens to be the key of E, and we get to the end, plans for nobody, and then it goes on. It's such a musically simple melody, and that is its strength, because it's not just simple. It is incredibly well constructed and has these qualities built into it so that it can serve the music and at the same time carry us with it. Well, one of the other things I noticed, this doesn't really have a catchy riff or hook instrumentally, does it? We start with this a cappella opening. The instruments come crashing in, but then they stay in the background, strumming, bing, 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 whatever they're doing. Bass is bouncing around, guitar is strumming, drums are doing whatever they're going to do. But it's nothing really that catches us and grabs our ears. So not having an instrumental hook or riff that pulls us that way is one of the reasons that the voices can keep on this swirling, downward spiraling line and hold our attention through it. And this little bit of guitar answering at the end. That's about the only place we have a moment to pay attention to the guitar, because everywhere else our attention is held by the voices. And would you believe it, the guitar is also using this sort of descent. Still working out the E major chord. Just descending, kind of echoing the whole pattern. Okay, now, the song that was number 49 was You Won't See Me. Am I quoting it? Am I naming the title properly? Right. And I commented on that one, how that melody was so fragmented and it had little bits of chopped up pieces with gaps between. And then it had this ooh la la la. And I talked about how the chopped up melody was so well complemented with this long ooh la la la. Here they have this ooh, ah la la la, or ooh la la la, whatever they're doing. It's very similar. I don't know which one came first, recording wise, but apparently this is the second one on the finished product. Somebody got inspiration from somebody else, didn't they? But this is a bit different, isn't it? Because here we don't have quite the chopped up feel, although it's certainly different from the swirling, continuous descending line of the verse, isn't it? Now we have Nowhere Man. Please listen. You don't know what you're missing. Still a bit of a spacing out of the groups of syllables, isn't it? Which is another example of maybe not such extreme chopping and spacing as the previous song, but now this is the place where you can insert some long ooh la la and have it work, but it is a smoother quality than in the previous one. I am still a bit surprised that I don't find any triplets in here, simply because this is John's work.
Nowhere man.
I love that section. I guess you know enough about me to know that I love when there are multiple vocal parts happening. It's something that I enjoy. And so, of course, I love this section. Oh, well, what do I notice about it? Other than this, nowhere man, please listen. I like this, please listen. It's so idiomatic and natural, conversational to a please listen. You could speak it on those pitches and nobody would know that you were quoting a song. Please listen. Nowhere man, please listen. You don't know what you're missing. Well, okay, that one's a little bit more, but this please listen, it feels so natural. Really well done. Now, let's look at the harmonies of this, and maybe I'll go to the piano for this one. So we have, let's clear out these markings for a moment. We'll get back to that. So we have this melody. Please listen. And then we have this quote from the opening. But then it wraps up there instead of, and so on. Okay, so harmonically, what's going on? We have an E major here, and then we have the Ahs coming in. And so it's a kind of a, I guess we'd say G sharp minor there. And while this Ah is holding on the G sharp minor, the voices go up out of it, preparing for the A, and then we move into the A. But when they sing, listen, it only starts on this A chord, and then it walks out of it. Okay, fine. But here's where it gets even more intense, and this is one of the reasons that I find this so satisfying, is that these long, sustained la 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 pitches, they're often at odds and clashing with the melody fragments that are coming and going, but the melody is so well presented, natural. It doesn't feel like it's really uncomfortable, but when we dig into it, we hear this. We have this A major. You hear how dissonant that is. We have the A underneath, and so we have that wonderful edgy, crunchy rubbing together of the two different chords stacked and pressed against each other, and there's this tension there, this friction. And then, once we've played this note, the backing voices move to harmonize. That's a different sound, right? And so that's happening in here throughout this whole section, which is one of the reasons it kind of makes us shiver in a beautifully exciting enjoyment way. I love that. It's painful, but it's beautiful. Dissonance again. Resolve. And then here, where we go, the world is at ye, the world. Okay, there's a little bit of melisma use. Okay, but what do we have underneath? We start, it could be, but by the time we're here, it no longer agrees. It's just great the way that it comes and goes. It's kind of like two rays of light, and sometimes they come together and shine a single beam, but then they diverge again and pull us different ways. And somehow the clash and the resolution, the release, is so beautiful, and we enjoy that in this recording.
Nowhere man.
And then we get to the end, and it's the voices that actually help us pay attention to the instruments there. The little drum fill, and suddenly we realize, oh wow, that bass has been bouncing around and really staying busy. We've been neglecting him. What brought our attention? La 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 la, because it's in the same rhythm as the instruments there. La 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 la, and on that note, the guitar enters. And when you're listening to that, let's see, I guess it was one of the great covers series I did recently. It was the one which was a folk song, and it was first uncovered by Leadbelly. And in that recording, you see me talking slowly. I'm trying to recall this here in this moment. Yes, and Nirvana then covered it. Where Did You Sleep Last Night? That In the Pines or something. Anyway, in the Leadbelly rendition of it, I commented on how he left room, kind of a gap, where the guitar accompaniment, little bit of accompaniment that was there, kind of left space for us to sing our own verse in our own way. It's kind of what's happening here. This doesn't feel like a guitar solo that wants to grab the limelight. It's imitating, echoing the melody of the verse. Not identically, but enough. We feel the downward descent. It starts with, and then it moves to here. And then we go to, looks like an A chord. And then we move down to an E. Same sort of, just gradually descending. We have this nice C natural here, which, ooh, that's a bit of a edginess, and it ends up being an A minor chord rather than A major. And then we arrive here on the E chord, which is the dominant, by way of a dissonance to resolution. Some of my other videos I've talked a little bit about that, and I don't want to get too technical here, so I'm not going to dive into it, but we call that an appoggiatura, where you lean onto a non-harmony note and then it resolves to the harmony. And so I feel like when I'm hearing this, it feels like a sort of imitation to sing the melody. Like the guitar is just giving a little support, a little outline sketch of the general shape of the melody, and it's inviting me to kind of use my imagination and create my own verse moment. I also like the twanginess of it. It mirrors the vocal tone in that regard. When we think we've already gone low enough on this dee-dee-dum, dee-dee-dum, bum, bum. Yeah, I guess it's down here. Bum. And then we hear this harmonic way up here, which is this note actually, but it sounds like it's by way of harmony. What a wide leap pitch-wise. And I guess it is the most exciting moment as far as range in the entire piece, because everything else, although we're going from top to bottom of an octave. We're pretty much staying within an octave. The instruments aren't doing much outside of that either. We don't have a grand solo which is throwing us all over the place. So that moment, which is not really a key point of the piece melodically or musical content-wise, it's just the end of a phrase. Just a little touch at the top after playing way down at the bottom adds a spark to it that I really enjoy. He sings "Nowhere Man" and slides into it. "Can you see me at all?" There's a tenderness in their voices there, like a sort of caring element, as if they're reaching out to this nowhere man and handling him very gently, as if we don't want to shake him too badly. He's certainly in an undesirable place. At least anybody with any vision wouldn't want to be in that condition. But they almost take pity on him, don't they? "Nowhere man, can you see me at all?"
Nowhere man, can you see me?
After we kind of start to feel like this guy, he's in a bad state. I mean, not successful, not driven. He's just existing. And then, isn't he like you and me? A bit like you and me? A bit like you and me. Kind of makes us turn around and look at ourselves for a moment, doesn't it?
Isn't he a bit?
And I love that last repetition of the phrase, making all his nowhere plans for nobody, and one of them goes up to the A. All his nowhere plans for nobody. And it ends also on this appoggiatura style. Oops. I forgot I had the C natural for A minor. All right, let's get back to here. Nobody. Really, really enjoyable. As much as I am a bit surprised to not be seeing some of the classic markers of their style, like the slow triplets, which this piece could easily have incorporated that, but perhaps it was, and I'm not saying it should be in here, it's so good the way it is. Don't need those triplets here. But it could have easily included some. Maybe John Lennon was really attempting to not fall into a cliche habit style of writing. Isn't he the one that often uses a lot of melismatic phrases as well, syllables as well, and they're just not really present in here. So it's almost as if he decided to take a very clean approach and see what he can do. In spite of not having triplets and those sorts of things, and in spite of being a very diatonically based, meaning in the key of E, piece, without having a lot of stuff going on in the instruments, primarily focused on the voices, there is something about it that reminds me of Strawberry Fields Forever. And it has mostly to do with the vocal style. The way they're coloring their tone, the way they're getting this smooth glide from one note to the other. It sounds like it could be kind of an early foray into that type of writing, singing, creating, which clearly eventually produced something like Strawberry Fields Forever. So you can tell I really enjoyed this piece. It's beautifully presented, beautifully sung, beautifully written, and I don't find it harmonically striking, but that's one of the beauties of it. It's so perfect just the way it is. No triplets, no fancy stuff, just the voices, just enjoying these harmonies and dissonances that we've explored along the way. And to the point that the instruments, although I have to say they're doing quite fine, they really don't grab us. Every once in a while, they stick their nose out just enough at the end of a phrase to make sure that we aren't forgetting that they exist, but then they just duck right back under and let us keep enjoying the fabulous lines and swirling harmonies of the voices themselves. Well, that was a lot of fun. That was Nowhere Man. And, well, the lyrics, I should pay attention to the lyrics for a minute too, because that was one of the big groundbreaking things about it, wasn't it? I've been so involved in the performance and delivery, I almost forgot to think about the lyrics, but let's think about these for a minute. I feel like this could easily be taken in a negative light, as being kind of a downer piece of writing. He's a real nowhere man, sitting in his nowhere land, making all his nowhere plans for nobody, and the descending lines, give it this kind of down, depressed, or at least lost feeling. Knows not where he's going to. I guess that's the line that stood out to me as being least natural, speech-wise. How many of us say he knows not where he's going to? Sure, you find it in poetry. But so much of this feels so natural, speech-wise, that it stood out to me because it doesn't. Isn't he a bit like you and me? Nowhere man, please listen, you don't know what you're missing. Nowhere man, the world is at your command. And at that point, it starts to feel more hopeful and positive, less like it's a meditation on the negative condition of this man or mankind, and more about looking at the possibility that he could wake up, he could come alive, he could become somebody, somewhere, doing something. And that's what appeals to me about this. And setting that kind of understated hopefulness, subtle positivity to this music, I think it's very appropriate that even though we have these descending figures which reflect the descent, the low place where he sits, it's in a major key. It doesn't sound depressed. It moves downwards. It takes us down into this state of, I'm just sitting here, kind of lost, can't pull my thoughts together, can't think, for whatever reason, whether it was a hard night or a long night or no night, and or whether it's a broader commentary on the state of humanity and mankind's inability to really pull together and focus together. I enjoy this quality of hopefulness for the future. And the gentleness with which it's handled, or he's handled. Take your time, don't hurry. Leave it all till somebody else lends you a hand. In other words, you can't, you're not capable. Maybe you're too tired, maybe you're too hungover, maybe you're too lost. Don't stress about it, it won't help. Somebody's going to come along and reach out a hand and pick you up and set you on the right path, and just wait for that moment. There's something incredibly caring and gentle that I feel in this piece. And then again, Nowhere Man, please listen. You don't know what you're missing. Nowhere Man, the world is at your command. The world is at your command. Wow, what a revelation. That's what strikes me about the lyrics, and I don't know how you all take them. I would be very curious to hear your thoughts. But there we have Nowhere Man, the first completely non-love related piece of music, poetry by Lennon. I have to say it was quite successful from my perspective. I'll see you soon.